Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 has been off to a bad start. We all know how badly the launch was, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the current situation. You can get into the game, but is it any good? Is it any improvement over 2020? I believe not, so let's discuss why. To get a better understanding of how my perspective is, I mainly or only do IFR flights. So if you're a guy that does a lot of VFR flights with smaller planes, you might have a different point of view on this. Let's get into the video. So at first I want to talk about the improvements that are in the game. The first thing I've noticed upon downloading 2024 was the small download size, only 50 gigabytes compared to the whopping 150 that was Flight Simulator 2020. And there was no catch. It was not like this was a pre-install and then afterwards you had to install another 50 or another 100 gigabytes. No, it was simply 50. So that was really nice to see. This also improved the loading times, which I am very glad to see. It was very refreshing coming from 2020 where I had so many add-ons and it would take minutes to load into a flight or just to simply start the game. Next is the career mode that brought a lot of new things to the game. People who were stuck doing endless free flights or landing challenges now have a sort of a scope. They can get a pilot's license, they can get a commercial pilot's license, all that good stuff. They can do some fun side activities like putting out forest fires, stuff like that. I haven't really gotten that far in career mode, so I'm only speaking of what I saw in the trailer and the main menu, but it's still very nice to see. It kind of takes the edge off if you're sick of doing random flights. The next thing that I want to discuss is better default planes, mainly Airbus planes that are in the game, like the Beluga. That's been a plane that I've wanted to fly for years. I mean, I love how it looks, and it is very good modeled in this game as well. It's not just a Braddock level plane that just looks nice on the outside, but has, shitty instruments on the inside or just plain simple A320 textures or whatever. The flight model has been improved as well, although I didn't really notice it so far, but that's what the community has been saying, and that's what the game also advertised. So I'm gonna believe them. But last but not least, the biggest improvement is the EFB tablet that has charts and has a flight planner tool, which is just amazing. I mean, you can just pull up the EFB tablet mid-flight or after flight, plan your new flight, and see the charts, the approach charts, the departure charts, all that good stuff. I think with a little bit more tweaking, this could potentially replace Navigraph. So this has the potential to make Navigraph subscriptions useless. Now let's talk about the downsides, and there are many more than improvements in my opinion. So first off, the main big downside for me is that third-party planes and add-ons, they don't work, except for the Phoenix A320, but there's already a there's already a A320 in the game, and only like Airbuses, so when it comes to airliners, so yeah, that isn't really an improvement for me, and I'm not talking only about planes, I'm also talking about add-ons like GSX. So it basically leaves you to do your own pushback by using reverse thrust when there is no pushback tug available. Next is the game relying on your internet connection very heavily. I know this was the case in 2020 as well, but this is even more so in this game. So you know how I talked about the smaller download size? Well, that's because this game relies on streaming very heavily. So if your internet connection is bad, then you may have a pretty bad experience with this game. You may see PlayStation 2 textures or just have really long loading times. And if someday Microsoft decides to pull the plug on this game to shut down the servers, then this game will be rendered useless because the game depends on their server status. Next is the default airports that are pretty glitched, like taxiways having huge elevation changes. This happened to me 3 times in the span of like 10 hours of flying, and this wasn't any small airport either. It was Charles de Gaulle in Paris and London Stansted. I mean, come on, even X-Plane 12, which is graphically inferior, gets their airports right. I mean, I was pretty impressed when I booted up X-Plane 12 for the first time and I saw how well they made their airports compared to 2024 Microsoft Flight Simulator. Next is the career mode that also is really bugged and not optimized yet. For starters, there are very long loading times between missions, between getting from the headquarters to your next mission, all that stuff. It kind of takes you out of the immersion, and it's just really frustrating and makes you want to quit. And also I've seen stuff happen, like the game makes you taxi to a certain holding point that makes you cross the runway. Then you get points deducted because you crossed the runway without permission, but there's no way to ask permission from the ATC, so you're kind of screwed. I also had this really weird bug when I had to do a mission carrying passengers so they could go sightseeing. Once I got to the point where they want to go sightsee, the plane just like randomly started accelerating really hard. Even though I put the throttles on idle, the plane also started pitching up, and the mission basically failed. So the career mode is kind of still a work in progress. And also the taxiway lights on the airports are just way too saturated. I mean, I can spot the airport like 60 to 80 nautical miles out during night flights because I just see like this massive green or blue glow depending on what the color of the taxiways are. I mean, the taxiways are brighter than the runway lights, which shouldn't be the case. I mean, I'm not an actual pilot, but I believe that's not how it's supposed to be. Correct me if I'm wrong. Next is the ATC still being bad. I mean, like I said before, you pretty much need PMDG in order to do a pushback, or your plane would have to have a pushback tool integration on itself, which most default planes in this game don't have. And last but not least, the default 737 MAX is pretty bad. I've seen a video of A330 driver who's a real pilot fly this plane and show us how bad the flight model actually is. You can change the trim in flight just a little bit and the plane will either go nose up or nose down very aggressively, which is not realistic at all. For me personally, I couldn't even get the plane to start because for some reason the ground power wouldn't connect. The ground power available light was on, however, even if the ground power was connected or was not connected, so that kind of seems like another bug. I don't know if anyone else experienced this, but it's a pretty bad plane. So in general, I believe Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 still has the upper hand with all of the third-party planes working and the add-ons, and also the default airports just overall being better. I've had 700 hours in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and I've only experienced once this big elevation change in taxiways. It took me 10 hours to find 3 airports with big elevation changes in 2024, so that's telling. So yeah guys, thanks for watching. I hope this video informed you if you're kind of doubting on whether to buy this game or not. If you have Game Pass, I suggest downloading it and try it out for yourself. Obviously, you have nothing to lose. But me personally, I found myself uninstalling the game, going back to the 150 gigabytes of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, and that says a lot because my internet connection is pretty bad, especially when it comes to Microsoft Store downloads. I'm limited to like 3 to 4 megabytes per second on average, so it took a long time, but after all it was worth it because in 2024 it just feels like a struggle playing the game. I've even had like in-flight freezes when I would change the graphics settings in 2024, and then if I change them back, then the flight would unfreeze. So yeah, I'm gonna stay away from this game until stuff gets fixed, stuff gets added that should have been in the game from to begin with. So thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.